Inside a little-known pyramid, excavation work is in full swing on Immunity Monday. Joseph used a uniquely shaped artifact to activate a stone wall covered with unfamiliar symbols, and in the dazzling electromagnetic pillar world, the gears of destruction began to turn quietly. At Stonehenge, in the west of England, a group of tourists came to visit. The altar, marked by stones weighing 50 tons, aligns with the solstices in astronomy. Yet no one knows the secrets it holds. Just as they marveled at the spirit of the ancient relics, a sudden tremor shook the ground, and as the central altar began to glow, the surrounding stones started to move mysteriously. As bolts of electricity converged on the central altar, they incinerated the fleeing tourists into ashes. This astonishing secret quickly reached the ears of Jacob. He is a science and education radio host running a program called Truth. During the show, he was sharing his capture of an electromagnetic pulse traveling from Maine to England within the Earth's energy field. A listener called in to accuse him of criticizing NASA for covering up the discovery of aliens on the moon, but he remained unfazed. He simply explained that he was referring to a robot head. But another listener's call was not so simple. This listener claimed that Stonehenge had started to move. Jacob initially thought it was a prank, but he received more details about the movement of Stonehenge from a third listener. He also checked the news and discovered that the military had indeed cordoned off the entire area, officially claiming it was for an archaeological excavation. Jacob immediately prepared to investigate. Meanwhile, he did not forget to contact his former colleague and longtime friend Joseph. He inquired about the inside story of the Earth's energy grid being impacted by electromagnetic pulses affecting Stonehenge. As for Joseph's previous predictions aligning with this, he hoped Joseph could join him in the investigation to prove their standing in the archaeological and scientific community and clear their names from being labeled as lunatics. However, Joseph seemed to have more pressing matters, needing time to reach the military-controlled zone 2 kilometers away, where Dr. John was ordered to assist with the investigation. Dr. Liz, who arrived earlier, had already begun her research. She discovered that radio waves were continuously oscillating within Stonehenge, but the strange thing was that the exact source was unknown. Researcher David presented scans of the interior of the stones, analyzing that there was an electromagnetic field inside, but this did not explain the cause of the incident. Outside the controlled area, Jacob had quietly sneaked in, taking advantage of the cover of night to hide near Stonehenge. The electromagnetic scanner in his hand detected an abnormally strong current. Just as Liz discovered the soil turning pink, she noticed the central altar statue beginning to glow. Jacob also detected that the intensity of the electromagnetic flow was continuously increasing, and the readings peaked instantly. At this moment, he could no longer worry about maintaining his disguise and shouted loudly for everyone to leave immediately. Before the command center could order the capture of this intruder, a strong earthquake suddenly struck Seoul. Stonehenge began to move once again, and the electromagnetic interference had reached 200 gigahertz, approaching radioactive levels. Lightning struck again, and a researcher who couldn't escape in time was shattered into pieces before everyone's eyes. At the same time, the Yucatan Pyramid in Mexico suddenly transformed and exploded, turning the entire area into a sea of fire. Chaos erupted within the research facility, as the energy released by Stonehenge originated from deep underground, with a new power comparable to 1,000 Hiroshima explosions. Liz believed that the two explosions must be connected, but John was too overwhelmed to consider anything else, as the land beneath his feet was already causing him enough trouble. Moreover, the intruder from last night had yet to be found. And at this moment, Jacob had once again arrived outside Stonehenge to investigate. Deep within the pyramid, Joseph also successfully found the route to the Divine City. Well, it seemed they were seeking some kind of redemption there. But Jacob wasn't as fortunate. Just as he scanned the strange patterns inside the stones, the security forces drove up and apprehended him. Meanwhile, John and his team at the research base discovered thermophilic fungal cells in the discolored soil samples, noting that intense electromagnetic activity had altered the molecular structure of the organic matter in the soil. It was akin to the changes when life on Earth first began to form, but the conversation was interrupted by new discoveries from the front line. Inside the stones, a shortening pattern was reducing the wavelength interference. Based on the intercepted path loss projection map, it is estimated that the others will completely disappear in 37 hours, at which point something significant is bound to happen. Time is running out for everyone. At this moment, the captain of the guard provided a new clue. He found a marked map in Jacob's bag with dense lines depicting a complete planetary energy grid, and one line was bolded. The general event is connected to both ends of the Yucatan Pyramid. John immediately asked for the intruder's name, and upon hearing it was Jacob, he was instantly relieved. It was he who claimed that NASA covered up the discovery of aliens on the moon. Coincidentally, David also knew him as the youngest recipient of the Provost Prize in Astrophysics, a recognized prodigy, but now everyone just thinks he's crazy. The lychee body can accumulate and store some information gaps he mentioned, without any explanation. In fact, all ancient relics are built at the intersections of underground energy grids. If there is no relic at an intersection, it only means it hasn't been discovered yet. As for the electromagnetic field within Stonehenge, he had seen it elsewhere too. Just as he was about to ask for specific detail, John called him over to watch the aerial imaging footage. With the increasing pulse recoil, strange currents appeared on the screen, and the electromagnetic interference emitted by Stonehenge counteracted and blew the helicopter in the air into pieces. Upon hearing this, the general went directly to the front line to hold people accountable. So far, the giant ship has caused 10 casualties, and not a single helicopter has been spared. If it is related to Mexico, the cost will be immeasurable. The general's thinking is very straightforward. Since it poses a danger, then blow it up. The explosives were all set in place. Jacob also learned this news through Zhang Ji, which frightened him into urgently wanting to see Liz. But the guards completely ignored him. As the bombs were detonated, a strong electromagnetic field formed on the surface of Stonehenge, rendering the explosion completely ineffective. Faced with the general's questioning, the scientists were unable to provide any explanation. However, someone can. Joseph's team has successfully reached the Divine City and scanned a pattern inside the altar room, which corresponds to the energy source for activating Stonehenge on the scroll. Clearly, this is a key. Jacob also recognized it as the Antikythera mechanism. It is currently held in the American Archaeological Foundation, matching the pattern he scanned inside the stones. He speculated that this is an electromagnetic key used to activate or deactivate Stonehenge, which is an ultra-precise mechanical device created by the ancestors. Regarding this statement, John and the general could only conclude that he was truly crazy, which is why he would say that NASA is stealing aliens. But Jacob explained, or by home. Another earthquake struck and the magnetic interference rose again, corresponding exactly to 10 hours after the last eruption in the countdown. The military mirror had completed its movement and an ancient site on the island of Java exploded, flattening the entire Indonesia. If this doesn't prove the connection between Stonehenge and global disasters, then nothing will. With no other options, Liz could only choose to believe Jacob, and he privately applied to the Major for a confidential outing. Jacob and Liz set out together to retrieve the mechanical device. Facing a global disaster, the Major could only take a gamble. Meanwhile, the General submitted an application to the Joint Council. If Stonehenge is not shut down before the countdown ends, they will deploy a nuclear bomb. John could only attempt to use a high-energy transmitter to interfere with Stonehenge's electromagnetic field, and conveniently, there was a radio telescope nearby. On the way, Jacob connected all the dots, the explosions every 10 hours, the thermophilic bacteria in the soil, and the disasters occurring worldwide. The purpose of Stonehenge is precisely to destroy the world, and then rebuild an environment suitable for the propagation of life. As a machine, it obviously does not know that human civilization could develop to its current level, and only operates according to its preset program. And its defense mechanism is equally remarkable. As the radio telescope emitted interference waves of the same frequency, even though the frequency band of the magnetic field emitted this time actively changed, John immediately ordered a synchronized adjustment. The electromagnetic waves continuously shortened, shattering glass and surpassing human limits, with the captured extremes approaching visible light, then instantly surpassing it until the wavelength neared gamma rays. The electromagnetic radiation exceeded 100 terahertz, and with such a short wavelength, Stonehenge was infinitely close to becoming a nuclear reactor. John could only order a halt and declare the plan a failure. All hope now rested on Jacob. The three of them successfully found a mechanical device emitting electromagnetic waves, which was glowing strangely under the influence of the energy grid. Just as Liz ordered the cabinet to be opened, a group of terrorists suddenly launched an attack. Jacob decisively smashed the display case, grabbed the device, and, under the Major's cover, escaped with Liz. After ensuring Liz's safety, he immediately turned back to find the Colonel. But he had already sacrificed himself, becoming the mastermind behind this incident. It was Joseph, who was very grateful to Jacob. It was precisely on the map marked by him that Joseph was able to find the untouched original mountain of the pyramid, and this mechanical device was precisely the electromagnetic key to activate the ancient temple, providing shelter to people on the day of the apocalypse. Their goal was to destroy the old world and usher in a new era. However, when faced with Joseph's invitation, Jacob still decided to save this world, but he fainted during a sneak attack. As soon as he woke up, Jacob immediately reunited with Liz, having deduced that there was a mole in the research base. Secretly leaking information to Joseph, the hypothesis about the destruction and reboot of the world was first proposed by Joseph. And that mechanical device was not only the key to shutting down the military array, but also to activating the secret chamber of the ancient pyramid. Another 10 hours passed, and once again the Stonehenge was activated, causing the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt to change in response, exploding with a roar, splitting North Africa, and bringing disaster to the Middle East. The Mediterranean submerged Egypt off. At this point, John could only pray for the general to prepare a nuclear attack on Stonehenge. Liz got in touch with John. It turned out that everything Jacob had said had become reality. John had no choice but to believe it, and he revealed to the two of them the plan to flatten Stonehenge with a nuclear bomb, but Jacob sternly stopped him. Once Stonehenge is destroyed, the immense energy contained within it will spread across the global energy network. If supported, the entire Earth would be exposed to electromagnetic radiation. The only solution now is for John to dispatch a team to assist the two in reclaiming the mechanical device. Inside the pyramid, Joseph had already gathered a group of followers to prepare to open the temple, and Jacob successfully used an electromagnetic detector to determine their location. As Joseph placed the instrument on the altar stone, Jacob's detector instantly reached the threshold. Amidst a tremor, an unfamiliar pyramid rose from the ground, precisely the primordial mountain described in ancient texts. The general from the research base came to inform everyone to evacuate immediately. Although John felt regret and repeatedly urged the general to reconsider, the general was resolute, believing that some must pay the price for their arrogance. An armed squad fired a grenade, blasting open the pyramid's door, providing cover for Jacob and the other to enter, only to find a group of followers there. During the investigation of the group, Jacob deduced that Joseph had already escaped with the device. Fortunately, the detector successfully tracked his continuous locations. The two immediately set off in pursuit without delay. In the last 10 hours, Stonehenge underwent another anomaly, with electromagnetic energy from the global energy grid converging there. Siphoned by the stones once the countdown reaches 0, the entire Earth will once again face a mass extinction of all species. The two finally found Joseph in the woods, and without a word, he directly shot and injured Liz. Jacob stepped forward to confront him, still hoping that Joseph could grant forgiveness to all of humanity. Joseph had long been disappointed with this world, and along with his longtime friend, he armed the soldiers. Suddenly, something caught Joseph's attention, and Jacob seized the opportunity to get up and engage in a scuffle with Joseph. Amid the struggle, a gunshot rang out, ending Joseph's life. The three hurriedly set off back to the research base, despite the scientists repeatedly explaining to the general that the situation could still be salvaged. The general was unwilling to bet the fate of the world on a broken antique. However, he was willing to send a plane to pick up Yagi, because it was his last chance. Regardless of success or failure, when the time came, he would launch the nuclear missile. At the moment of parting, Jacob handed his Pro-Witch medal to Liz, knowing that his fate was uncertain. But fortunately, in the final moments of his life, there was still someone unwaveringly standing by his side. At this moment, John David and a group of scientists returned to the base. Whether they managed to activate it in time or faced a nuclear explosion, they were finally confronting extinction. They decided to make one last effort in the final moments of life, with only 8 hours left until the deadline. By the time Jacob rushed all the way from Maine to England, only 30 minutes remained. This was a race against time, with the stakes being the survival of all life on Earth. Inside the base, David, who had already secured control, no longer hid his intentions. It turned out he was the undercover agent hidden within the base and a loyal follower of Joseph. He planned to set an ambush here, waiting for Jacob to arrive and then enlighten him, witnessing the restart of everything for his deceased leader. In the last 11 minutes, the deranged David actually opened fire on the two of them, then pretended as if nothing had happened to ambush Jacob. In a critical moment, John, with his last breath, revealed the truth, only to have his life mercilessly taken by David. Jacob had no choice but to drive away, with David in pursuit. In the last 3 minutes, the order to launch a nuclear missile from the fighter jet was finally confirmed, with Jacob and David arriving one after the other outside Stonehenge. However, the fighter jet was affected by electromagnetic interference, preventing it from automatically locking onto the target. Jacob was also unfortunately shot in the leg by David. In the final minute, the pilot switched to manual launch of the nuclear missile, and Jacob was knocked to the ground by David as if everything was destined to come to an end. However, Jacob did not give up. He struggled to pick up the jade artifact, but was stopped by David once again. The pilot also locked onto the target and pressed the launch button. Even at such a critical moment, David couldn't resist mocking Jacob for actually believing that the space agency discovered aliens on the moon. But in the last second of his life, Jacob still didn't hesitate. The self-devouring device activated the giant array, and the electromagnetic energy that had been accumulating for a long time shot up into the sky, even destroying the nuclear missile. The general watched the beam of light reaching up to the sky. Deeply shocked, the light dissipated and spread far, saving the celestial event. However, some people would never return, but that's okay, as there will be successors to carry on his legacy and promote the truth of the program. The end.